Good morning, 8th grade. It's June 1st. We have just 2 weeks left of school. My hair is getting long, but the school year is getting short. Let's get into it. We have poetry again this week. This is the last week I will be giving lecture and asking you to take notes. Next week, we will do an assessment that is related to poetry. There'll be one thing at the beginning of the week, and then we're done for the year. So this week, we're going to go through 4 different types of poetry, I think. I'm going to ask you to try your hand at writing one of 2 forms of poetry, and then I'm going to ask you to turn in your notes. That's all we have going on this week. Please take a look at the notes you've taken over the last 3 weeks and be prepared to have an assessment next week. Okay, so we're going to start this week with 2 forms of poetry that sound very similar. We have epigram and epitaph. An epigram is just a witty verse, polished, terse, often witty, either in prose or verse. It's usually a closed couplet or quatrain that is just 2 or 4 lines, and it really is the tone that makes it an epigram. Our example here, I'm tired of love, I'm still more tired of rhyme, but money gives me pleasure all the time. So just a witty remark made in rhyme is an epigram. Not to be confused with the similar sounding but completely different purposed epitaph. When you have an epitaph, the idea is it's writing that could be placed on someone's grave. Usually it is, however, for humorous effect. It is not actually intended to go on a gravestone. So our first example, here lies my wife, here let her lie, now she's at rest, and so am I. Or from William Shakespeare's actual gravesite, his sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. Next up, we have shaped verse. It's kind of a shame we don't have time. I have students that usually have fun with this when I make this one of the poems that we write, but it's simply this: poetry in the shape of the topic about which the poem has been written. So if someone in this example is writing about flowers, they have described the flowers: blooming, colorful, sweet smelling, tulips and daisies, stems and petals, leaves in shades of green, and they've written it around the shape of a flower. So one year I had a student do a poem about an elephant in the shape of an elephant. I thought that was quite good. I included it in my test at the end of the year. I've saved that. That's quite a good shaped poem there as well. And that's all it is. Poetry written in the shape of the topic about which the poem has been written. Okay, narrative poem. We briefly mentioned what a narrative poem was in our first lecture. A poem that tells a story and usually has the basic elements of fiction such as characters, conflict, and plot. So you don't have to write that down, but know that I'm going to ask you to write either a narrative poem or a sonnet this week, and I wanted to show you a student-written version of a narrative. If you choose to write a narrative, it seems like it might be an easier task than a sonnet that uses all sorts of rules and has a very strict rhyme structure. What I'm going to ask you to do is write a minimum number of lines and be sure to tell a story. It should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. This is a really good example of that. You could probably have gotten away with making it a little bit shorter, but I think this is just the perfect storytelling length. Graying clouds overflow with rain as I enter the barber shop. Clutching the shaking hand I strain, holding my hair that's to be chopped. The door opens with a loud bell, and I'm quickly bustled inside my personal hell, where my fears are verified. The hairdresser has an evil smirk, and she has me sit in the chair, holds up scissors sharp as a dirk, and moves them up toward my hair. She laughs with a wicked snicker, then begins to snip away. Holding back the urge to push her, I continue in my doomsday. Piece after piece falls one by one, landing on the floor. Finally, she says she is done, for I couldn't take much more. Now, looking back at it, I laugh. About every small shake and flinch, my dreamed pain wasn't even half, 'cause she only cut off an inch. So we've got not only a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, we have a sort of humorous outcome at the end. This is really well done. The secret word is popcorn. So one of the options this week is going to be writing a narrative poem. This was done in rhyme. You don't have to use this rhyme scheme. You could do an AABB rhyme scheme per stanza. Works for you, that works for your storytelling flow. I'm going to say rhymed couplets or rhymed quatrains are going to work best. All right, let's look at a sonnet. A sonnet is another structured poem. They say it's written in iambic pentameter. You're going to hear all of your life in literature about iambic pentameter. An iamb is something that they call a foot, which is two syllables. The first syllable is unstressed and the second syllable is stressed. When you put them together, you have an iamb. When you have iambic pentameter, you have a pentagram, pentagon. You have 5 of those things. So two syllables times 5 equals 10 syllables per line in iambic pentameter. Very strictly, for an English or Shakespearean sonnet, the rhyme scheme goes ABAB, CDCD, EFEF, GG. That sounds complex, but you've heard it and you kind of know how that works. It can also be ABBA, CDDC, EFFE, or GG. There are 2 sections to the poem, sometimes separated into stanzas, and the final lines are a couplet. Notice both of these end in GG. Okay, our example from Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. I'm going to count my syllables here. 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. So that's 10 syllables per line if you were counting along. But we can also look dignity, mutiny, scene, unclean. There's our A, B rhyme scheme. Foes, life, throws, strife, love, rage, remove. Ooh, we're going love and remove. Love, rage, remove, stage, and then attend and mend. So we have this, again, 14-line poem that has this very strict structure. If you are careful, you can do this. I know some people took on the limerick poem last week. They wanted to do the rhyming. They wanted to take that challenge. And I think for those people, this is going to be a good structure to stretch your muscles with and see what you can do. You focus on having 10 syllables per line. If you can, I will not hold you to it if you miss here or there. But then that rhyme structure, that's really what we're looking for. One of these 2 rhyme structures in a 14-line poem. Okay, so I will have notes. Hopefully you've been taking notes. I'll have notes on Google Classroom, and I will have some structure laid out for you so you can do a sonnet or a narrative poem. And that's all we are doing this week. Okay, I'll be available via Google Hangouts on Monday and Wednesday from 9 to 11. But of course, you can always contact me during the week via the chat or comments in Google Classroom or via email. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get the last update that's coming next week. Well, alrighty, partners, that's all we have for this week.